Hi, this is Todd Hagstette with the English department, and today I'm talking about an in-class group work activity that I've come to refer to as chaos theory group work, named after the interdisciplinary theory that even in the most random and chaotic of systems, you can detect patterns of organization and feedback loops. And this group work activity is certainly chaotic, but there is a method behind it as well. I started using this kind of activity because I was unsatisfied with the results of kind of run of the mill group work in the classroom. I like the idea of students interacting with each other and building knowledge in their conversations, drawing on each other's thoughts and expertise. But when I would organize small group discussions and then those groups would report back to the class as a whole, I found the results lackluster and the students overall kind of uninterested. So this is a variation on that sort of ordinary system of group work where students are going to change groups repeatedly throughout the class session. They will have a series of discussions on different topics with different groupings of students. And so overall, the result is a very high energy type of classroom where you actually cycle through a good bit of information over the course of a short period of time. So many objectives with organizing a group work activity in this way. Obviously, having students learn collaboratively, deal with each other, and draw on each other's thoughts and expertise. This activity also brings in the element of movement, so that the blood is flowing and there's a bit of energy in the classroom. This activity is good for topics where the development of critical thinking is going to be of primary importance. This is not a great activity if the object of study is a more objective or factual thing, but rather this is where students need to really get their imaginations and their minds working in a kind of critical or analytic way. The ideal object of study is something that is large or complex or multifaceted. For my purposes in the English department, this is an activity that works well with introducing a novel, something that has many different avenues into understanding it that you can cover over the course of many different discussions. So you can engage those multiple topics very quickly in this activity, not in great depth, but a great overview of many of the major concerns of a large, multifaceted topic, and then of course the the novelty that is part of a lot of movement, a lot of interaction with each other, and a lot of different iterations of the group. That adds a fun element and, like I said, a kind of chaos or frenetics to it. I should mention that for the purposes of describing the organization of the group work, I'm going to be talking about the Mark Twain novel, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, which is a sufficiently complex work that there are topics that inform it, and it's a work that I've also used this activity for in the past to some success. I would say that this is an activity that's kind of memorable for students, if nothing else. Now describing how the thing gets set up, it takes several steps, and it sounds a little bit more elaborate than I think it actually turns out to be, but I'll do the best I can to make it clear. So for the activity, you will want to decide on a series of major topics that you would like for students to cover over the course of the class period. Ideally, I think it would be somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 or 5 topics, all related to the larger object of study. And then you want to establish a physical location in the classroom for each of those discussion pods, what I'm going to call a discussion pod. This would look exactly like a traditional setup for group work where the groups would kind of be in corners of the room. The difference is that students are going to be changing places a good bit. So the physical location is attached to the topic, which will remain stable even as the members are changing. So for my example of Huckleberry Finn, these are four big topic areas that we could discuss productively about the book, and I will have them arranged in basically the four corners of the classroom. These are kind of broad in this iteration. I would vary up the way I would phrase or organize these discussion areas depending on the level of the students involved. So for a 400 level class, advanced English majors, I would probably keep the topics kind of broad in this way, where they're just suggestions of ideas in order to let the discussion that the students have be as free flowing as possible. If I was working with less advanced students, I would probably make these a little bit more pointed with specific questions within these topic areas that the group is tasked with answering. After you have those discussion pods established, you want to divide the class in half into two big groups. So here in a class of 20 students represented by these X's, I will divide them in half, giving me two large groups. And you want to name the groups because you're going to refer to them throughout the exercise. If you're completely uninventive, you can just call them group 1 and group 2, but I prefer to name the groups in reference to the topic of the class. So for Huckleberry Finn, I might call them the Dukes and the Kings in reference to those conmen characters in the novel. I've called them the groups the Rafts and the Rivers before. For the purposes of this discussion, I'm going to just call them the Red Group and the Green Group. Now, I would also advise that you come to class with a sheet of labels or name tags that you have already put the group names on, and you can hand them out to the students. They can put them on their clothes, and that way they'll always remember which group they're in, because as the changing begins to happen, it gets a little bit chaotic, and so they might forget. Okay, then you want to take the students that are in these two big groups and have them distributed evenly into the discussion pods as you would for an ordinary group work activity. So here are our discussion groups again, and I'm going to put the students around it. And as you can see, I have them evenly distributed in the four discussion pods so that the red and the green group are basically evenly represented throughout, because they're going to be changing places and you want to make sure you're able to maintain the same number of students in each group throughout the activity. Now, because there's going to be so many changes of venue for the students, I highly recommend writing down the times that you get them to change and prepare to keep a close eye on the clock. Essentially, each student is going to go to each of the discussion pods and spend 10 minutes in each one. And the way that they will change looks like this. So, using as an example a Tuesday-Thursday 140 class, giving myself 20 minutes or so to take roll and answer any questions and then explain the activity and get them in their discussion pods and in their groups. We'll begin the discussions at 2 o'clock, and then from that point on, every 5 minutes there will be a group change. So after 5 minutes, I will announce that the red group, members of the red group, need to leave their discussion pod and move on to another discussion pod that they have not yet been to. 5 minutes after that, the green group will move to their second discussion pod. And that pattern will continue throughout until all the students have visited all 4 discussion pods. The one strange bit of changing here is at the 2:35 mark, where the red group will move back to their first discussion pod because they had essentially only spent 5 minutes at the beginning of the activity there. And so they move back to complete the full 10 minutes in each of the 4 pods. Then the discussions end at 2:40, and you have 15 minutes to debrief or otherwise talk about the results of what they've just done in their groups. Now, once you have that list of change times, which I highly recommend you write down because the chaos of the movements will be something that can confuse you as well. You call out those changes and monitor the student movements very closely. So in our setup that we started with everyone in their first group, after 5 minutes, I will tell the red group members to change groups. Taking as an example the bottom right slavery and morality discussion pod, those red members will leave that group and go to one of the others. In place, 3 new red members will join the slavery and morality group, joining the 2 green members who are left behind. 2 rules for changing when you announce for the students to change. One, they need to go to a discussion pod that they have not yet visited in anticipation of visiting all of them throughout the course of the class. And you want to discourage group members from traveling together. So you don't want 2 members from the slavery and morality pod to go together to one of the others. You want to keep things moving so that lots of different students are working together. After 5 minutes after that red group change, the green group will change. And so those 2 green group members will leave the slavery and morality table and go to other discussion pods. So hopefully that was clear. The benefits are that this offers a springboard to more in-depth discussions of those topics. In other words, students are getting their feet wet talking to each other about each of those major issues within the novel. And then those are the same issues that you'll be discussing as a class or working on over the next couple of class periods. So this activity, I think, works really well at the beginning of a major discussion session on something like a novel. I might do this in the first class. Introduce the major topics, get them a little bit initiated into it, and then we can go into a lot more depth over the next several classes. Another benefit is it builds a lot of cohesion among the students. In an ordinary group work situation, a student might be interacting with 3 or 4 other members of the class. Here, if I'm counting correctly, each student in each discussion pod, in each one that they visit, will work with over a third of the class over the course of that discussion. And so you really have a lot more large interaction between the students. This also puts the students in different roles as they change over in each of these discussion pods, so that there is always a couple of students who are new to the group and a few students who have been talking about that topic already for a few minutes. They can interact and share their expertise. And the last benefit is that it's a lively class. It blends collaboration and physical movement. When I've done this in the past, it's tended to be popular. Students think it's a kind of fun and interesting class. It always gets mentioned in my student evaluations of teaching. I think this is an example. This is an activity that I basically invented. I can't find any references to it, and I don't recall ever reading about it before. So I have instead pointed to a few resources that touch on aspects of it. The first 2 links here are to articles about incorporating physical activity or movement in the classroom. The third is an article from The Confident Teacher about group work strategies. This chaos theory group work tends to draw on a couple that are mentioned here, such as jigsaw or snowballing, or the think, square, share strategies. And then the final one is an article about multimodal learning environments, bringing together different sorts of learning. So overall, I'm hoping that this was clear. I hope that if you brave this activity, give it a shot in the classroom, that you have success with it. And I wish you all the best as you face the chaos.